Welcome to this week's video where we are going to cover when dieting or undertaking a fat loss period is a bad idea. So losing fat is all about timing. If you get the timing wrong, then the results will not be as good. And this comes from both a mindset perspective, but also a physiological perspective, because the body is both mental and chemical in the way that it functions. So there's 3 that I want to share with you, and the first one is you should not diet when you're stressed. So stress is it's that feeling where burning the candle at both ends. And it is also, in a way that we rarely talk about, can be the opposite state, which is a collapsed state. So if you are highly fatigued or if you're highly wound up, both of those states are an indicator of chronic stress or extreme stress, and both of those states are not a good time to embark on a diet. Okay, so when we're stressed, we either fight, flight, or freeze. So fight and flight is the sympathetic arm where we have all that adrenaline and we're just go, 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 and we can't sit still. And then we have the freeze state, which is actually where everything down regulates, but to the point where it almost goes offline. So stress is not always being hyped up. So just keep that in mind. It's always very important to tune into your body and work out where you're at before you do something like fat loss. And most often when we're stressed is exactly when we want to go on a diet, because if we're in a stress state or if we're activated in some way, then that's generally when, if we have, say, body image issues or, underlying negative feelings around ourselves or around our lives, that's usually when that urge to change something comes up. And that's when we start looking into the outside world, things like buy a new car, buy a new house, go shopping, lose weight, in order to correct that feeling and get us back into a nice, safe space again. So always keep in mind, and if you've watched my previous videos on fat loss, you will know that fat loss is a stressor. So going on a diet and limiting calories actually creates stress in the body. And what the body doesn't handle well is compounding stress. So dieting is a stressor. Stress is not always bad. So you have a type of stress called eustress, which is where you're putting a gentle challenge on the body. You're forcing it to go outside of its comfort zone, but not so much that it causes fight, flight, or freeze. So if you're already in fight, flight, or freeze, you can imagine that adding a diet and another stressor is actually just going to accentuate the stress state you're already in. And fat loss isn't going to be a priority, because when we are stressed, fat gain, fat storage, fat maintenance is actually the priority, especially for women. Okay, so it spikes cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and it also makes metabolism not as efficient. So if you're in fight or flight, a lot of the blood is rushed away from the organs and it's actually not available for digestion and nutrient assimilation. And if you're in a freeze/collapse state, often it's all down regulated. So everything's so slow that you're not going to get the most out of your food either. So when you're in a not stressed state or just a moderately stressed state, then cortisol is manageable, insulin is stable, metabolism is better, and nutrient assimilation is better. And we can also handle additional stress on top of the diet. So just to give an example, something like wanting to drink alcohol every evening is often a way of regulating yourself from a fight-flight state back into a nice regulated safe space. And if you're someone that relies on, say, sugar or caffeine for energy, you're more likely in a freeze type state. So if you're relying on all of those things, then that's a heavy indicator that your body actually might not be in the best position for fat loss. And again, this also includes when you're not eating enough. So that's already a stressor. If you've been in chronic caloric deprivation, you need to recover the metabolism before you lose fat. So if you want to learn more about how lower calories can impact your metabolism and create stress in the body and make fat loss hard, then see my video on that, which is linked below. And if you want to learn more about stress and stress management, then I also have a video on that, also linked below. So that's my first reason why you shouldn't diet. My second one is if you're not in a position to be consistent or accurate. It's super simple. A lot of people think fat loss is all about just jumping on that diet trend, cutting out that food group, going on that 1200 calorie diet, joining that group challenge, this kind of thing. That's not it at all. That is not how you create lasting fat loss. Fat loss is something that needs to be measured, it needs to be tracked, it needs to be consistent, and you have to stay the course. So if you're someone who's quite overweight and your body's actually really stressed in that state, then doing something like just eating a bit healthier or just moving a bit more or just sleeping a bit better, you know, or changing small habits can actually lead to fat loss. So, because in that case, it's actually safer for the body to lose fat than it is to stay where it is. If you're in a healthy body fat range or a body fat range that the body just doesn't care about, like you might even be 35% and really stressed out and your body just thinks, you know what, I don't want to deal with that right now. We've got other problems, like our life's in danger. That's what the stress response essentially thinks, is that your life is in danger. And so it is preserving your life, not worrying about losing fat, because having excess fat is really great if your life's in danger, because that's excess calories that you can use later in case of a famine, you know? So just remember, your body doesn't really know what's going on. And if you want fat loss, it has to be a plan. So you've got a plan, you've got to track, you've got to check in, you've got to follow a consistent plan week by week, which has you burning off fat, and you just keep on doing that same old thing. So I talk about this a little bit more in my How to Lose Fat video, and I will also link that one below. So if you're traveling heaps, or you hate the idea of tracking, or you don't want to follow a plan, do not start a diet. There is no easy way to do it. So just taking carbs out is not going to give you lasting fat loss. And yes, it's easy. I know you probably don't have to track, and if you've never done it before, it might lead to fat loss, but it's not going to ensure that fat stays off, because at some point your body's going to upregulate all of those signals and get you back on the carb train, and you're probably not going to be able to control yourself. And then the next time you take them out, your body's going to know exactly what's happened. It's going to remember from last time that there was a famine of carbs, and it's going to not burn fat in the same way that it probably did the first time. Unless you're like a hyper responder, but this is very rare. So just make sure that you can be consistent, you can track, and you can follow the same plan week in, week out, and you can know exactly what you're eating before you even think about going on a fat loss plan. And then my third one is, do not diet if you have just finished a diet, whether it was successful or unsuccessful. So it comes under stress, but I just want to highlight it on its own. It's very important. So when we do diet successfully, we have created moderate stressful conditions on the body, which it has responded well to. And that's why you have burned body fat, and that's why you're in a leaner body now. But with this successful dieting period, your metabolism most likely has adapted, unless you've done it in a very controlled way which preserves metabolism, which most people have not. So let's assume you've just done a normal fat loss process, or you've done an elongated type of fat loss process. Then now your metabolism has down-regulated. So once you've done a dieting process and there has been metabolic adaptation, the next thing you have to do is actually recover that adaptation and bring it back to baseline before you would even start dieting again. So generally, best practice now for fat loss is to give people fat loss periods and then give them a refeeding period and then diet again and refeed again, because it preserves the resting metabolic rate better than if you just keep dieting and keep lowering calories over a long period of time. So in the past, we used to do really long diets. Like you might diet for 9 months straight and just throw in a few cheat meals. But at the end of that dieting period, the metabolic rate has taken such a hit that the weight gain after that is generally more excessive than the fat loss in the first place. And it comes on much quicker. So now we tend to do like fat loss phases, building phases, diet breaks, things like that. You might have heard those terms. And this is all about the new science and the new practical application of dieting and metabolic preservation, because the preservation of your metabolism and your muscle mass is actually what's going to help you maintain a healthy body composition in the long run, whether you diet or not. And then if you have dieted, say, unsuccessfully, let's just say if you actually think about it, you go, you know what, I've been actually trying to diet for the last 6 months. That's not good either. So whether you have succeeded or not, so assuming you might have done that and actually only lost a kilo, maybe you've put on some weight, or maybe you've seen no results at all, then you still need to stop dieting, and it's still not a time to start a diet. So you're going to have to go up in calories. Make sure you eat a consistent amount of food at your maintenance level every single day for a period of time to get your body out of stress mode, out of famine diet mode, and back into, oh, there's an abundance of food. We're safe, we're nourished, we're fine. So if you've dieted down for a wedding, or you've dieted down for a competition or a photo shoot or something like that, and you've plateaued, you've reached a goal, do not diet again. Now is the time to repair the metabolism by laddering the calories back up. In doing that, you may put on 1 or 2 or 3 kilos. That's normal, because your body was depleted at the end of the dieting phase. So you're going to put on a bit of water, you're going to hold more glycogen in your muscle, and with that comes water, and with glycogen comes a bit of water as well. So you're going to be heavier. You might even put on a kilo of fat A lot of this stuff comes with the correction process, but you will never be able to diet again or maintain the weight loss. And you also have to taper off the cardio. So if you've been doing like 5 cardio sessions a week, you're going to have to cut them back because you don't want to be in a cycle of excess exercise and lack of food, because eventually the body's going to snap back and it's going to start creating conditions for fat regain. So in summary, with the stress component of those, so the first and the third point that I mentioned, it's all about stress. So you're managing stress in the body, you're finding a really good time to diet. It is not when you've just finished a diet, it is not after years of trying to diet, and it is not when you're stressed out. Okay, so you have to recognize these things. So the best thing to do in those times is to preserve metabolism, repair metabolism, or maintain metabolism. So, I got an inquiry just the other day saying somebody's in very high stressed out state, but they can't lose weight. What should they do? And I said back what I would say to all of my clients, which is you need to focus on just eating maintenance calories. And I told her that you just need to focus on eating maintenance calories. And I had a client a couple of weeks ago. She's been trying to diet but can't be consistent, so we pulled her off a diet. Then I have another client who's highly stressed. She's not losing fat, so we pulled her off the diet. And then I have multiple clients who are in the process of actually repairing their metabolism because they've been chronically dieting. A couple of them, we tried to do a fat loss period and it wasn't successful, so we've gone back up, and now I'm forcing them to eat more for a period of time before we diet them again. And then I've got my other clients that just did their comp, so there's 4 of them, and they're all laddering their calories back up and tapering their cardio out. Okay, so it's a very technical process, and there are very wrong times to diet. And if you choose those times and you keep trying to diet over and over again and you keep failing at it, all you're doing is creating conditions for fat gain and metabolic adaptation, which does not serve your long-term body composition goals. So make sure you're not stressed, make sure you haven't been just dieting, and make sure you're in a position where you can be consistent and accurate for the period of time that the diet falls under. Okay, so that's it for this week. The 3 times you should not diet. If you have any questions or comments, pop them in the box below. The videos that I mentioned will also be in the description below. My other social media channels that you might want to check out. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.